As if this day has not gotten crazy enough, we're now hearing that there's a problem with the Jamal Hill-Carlos Ulberg fight, the co-main event of UFC 303. I've already done a number of videos on the main event possibly being off, but Ariel Helwani reporting now that they are looking at Brian Ortega and Diego Lopes. So we're going to read the tweet here from Ariel real quick, and then I'll talk about this possible fight. In addition to working on a new main event for 303, I'm told the UFC is also looking at a new co-main for the card. The current co-main, Hill-Ulberg, might need a replacement now too. If so, could get bumped down. One new fight has been discussed, not for the main, is Brian Ortega, Diego Lopes, which, again, amazing fight, but definitely not a main event for an international fight week card. Absolutely love that fight. And then Ariel followed this up a few hours later saying, now that the Saudi main event situation has been resolved, which did a video on that already, all the focus now is on UFC 303. They have a new main event lineup that doesn't include McGregor and Chandler. They have a new co-main event lineup that doesn't include Hill-Ulberg, which he referenced earlier, which is the Ortega and Lopes fight. And then he goes on to talk a little about, and maybe I'll do a separate video on this later, but it sounds like they might be moving McGregor Chandler, which I think would make sense. I mean, Chandler's waited so long, wait a couple months more, depending on what's going on with McGregor. We still don't know yet. It's obviously, or I would think it's an injury. No talk, by the way, is centered around Chandler fighting someone else in 303. That was once discussed at the very beginning, but nothing made sense. The plan as of now has seemed to move on. Anyways, the video is not about McGregor Chandler. We'll wait till there's more updates on that. The video is on this possible Brian Ortega Diego Lopes fight, which I absolutely love. This is a great fight to add to UFC 303. Again, I want to be very clear about this. This is not confirmed yet, but we can definitely discuss it as a possibility of a fight coming together because it does make a lot of sense. I know Brian Ortega coming off a really good win in his last fight, which some people feel like should earn him a title shot. But then you've got Diego Lopes, who's available, who's also coming off a really nice win streak right now. Rankings wise, doesn't make the most. I mean, let's look at the rankings right now. I do think that Lopes is. I think he's only got the one ranked win over Sodiq Yusuff, which that's an iffy case. But in a situation like this where they need to pull out all the stops, because you see right now where is Diego Lopes? Oops, I'm looking at middleweight. That's just how long of a day it's been. We've got Diego Lopes at 14, Brian Ortega at 3. So yeah, similar to kind of this Ikram and Whitaker fight where it's like, it's not really fair to Ortega, but if you're Ortega, who are you going to fight? It looks like they're going to try and do Holloway and Topuria next, or even then you still got Volk ahead of him. So Ortega's kind of left in the dust. As great as that win was over Yair Rodriguez, he's kind of in a spot where he needs to keep active. This actually reminds me more of Corey Sandhagen and Umar Nurmagomedov in the sense that, Umar doesn't have a ranked win and he's at, closer to the lower in the rankings, but they need a main event. Corey needs to keep active. So they're giving him Corey Sandhagen. But anyways, this would be an awesome fight for a variety of reasons. Like Lopes has become like the guy at featherweight right now. Like he's looking amazing because obviously known for his ground game. His stand-ups come a long way. Like we saw that in the last fight. Against Sodiq Yusuff, getting a quick finish. And again, Yusuff, not an easy guy to take out, finishing him in the first round. Got a knockout over Pat Sabatini before that. Got a great triangle over Gavin Tucker, rising up very quickly. And with the UFC, going to Mexico and having that market as well. I know he's Brazilian, but also Mexican as well. They want to push this guy. He's young, he's good looking, he's talented, he's exciting. This is more about Diego Lopes than it is about Brian Ortega. Now, Brian Ortega, look, I give him full credit. Really good win in his last fight over Yair Rodriguez in a fight where a lot of people were counting him out. He's had a number of layoffs and a bunch of personal things going on, but that was a really solid win over Yair Rodriguez, bouncing back from that loss he had previously, which was more of an injury than a loss, I think. But again, Ortega's kind of a victim of timing right now and a victim of the UFC needs a fight, right? So this is something, and I'll, even before Ariel mentioned this was something I heard behind the scenes back when Conor and Chandler was in jeopardy before this Hill stuff. So the Hill and Ulberg stuff. So again, really big fan of this fight. Pick on this one. I might go Diego Lopes, guys. Honestly, I know Ortega has fought far better opposition, but he's also, a little bit older, not much, a little bit older though. And, again, hasn't been as active, right? Like if you look at, if we just want to count, so he fought obviously Yair earlier this year. Prior to that was 2022, 2021. So basically since 2020, he's had 4 fights. If you go look at Diego Lopes since 2020, he's had a ton of fights, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh no, some of these are grappling. So we'll go 1, 2. I'm just going to do a quick count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 fights. So obviously activity level, Lopes is definitely got it. Let's do a quick tail of the tape though. 33 to 29, like I mentioned, 5'8" to 5'11", 69 to 72. So Lopes is going to be a little bit bigger in this fight as well. But yeah, I just want to say that I'm a fan of this fight. Again, not official yet, But I think if Ariel's putting it out there, it's probably something that's going to happen. They need, I mean, this card, let's be honest here. Once we heard the McGregor news was in rough shape, and now we're hearing potentially about Hill and Olberg being, changed up. By the way, I am hearing it's Hill who's out. That's what I've heard from a couple people. We'll see if that comes to fruition as far as that fight being off. But yeah, I'm hearing it's Hill. Does Olberg stay on? Probably, find a light heavyweight that could take him on. I guess that's a discussion for another video as well. But yeah, this is a good co-main event for this card just because they're two big names, two exciting fighters, and a lot of implications for the featherweight division. Like if Diego Lopes wins this fight, we got to start talking about him fighting for a title, especially if he finishes Ortega. And conversely for Ortega, like how can you deny the guy being at the top of the heap if he finishes Yair Rodriguez and then Diego Lopes, or even just gets a win over him? So that's kind of where I sit right now. I am a fan of this fight. I think it makes sense. This is what the UFC's got to do. And I'll say the obvious here, and I know people hate me bringing it up, but this is why the UFC's got to stop doing so many events. They won't. They have the ESPN deal. They have to do as many cards as they can to keep that up. It's more of a sausage factory than quantity, so to speak, as far as putting on events. But this is why you don't have a lot of options. UFC kind of backs themselves into a corner. I kind of look at UFC 303 with McGregor and Chandler being out as the equivalent of doing your homework the night before a project. Like you're trying to scramble to get something together. And I can't wait. I'm sure it's going to come out. They've got to have the Fight Inc. Behind the scenes footage come out in a few months of what's actually happening behind the scenes. I can only imagine. I would pay that pay-per-view. I'd pay for that pay-per-view more than this pay-per-view of watching what's going on behind the scenes. Because to me, it's fascinating right now. Let's have a quick look at 303. Again, this is just a rumor. Even Tapology has this listed as a rumor. UFC 303. So again, I think it's safe to say McGregor Chandler's off. Safe to say Hill Olberg's probably off. So that leaves you with Joe Pfeiffer and Barrio, fun fight. Bueno Silva Chasson, big fight for the bantamweight. Gary and Page, which is probably still one of the best fights on there. And then after that, this is looking more like a fight night card than a pay-per-view. And I've heard some people say, are they going to change this to a fight night card? Absolutely not. This is International Fight Week. If this was a card in like, I don't know, April or like November, well, not November because they always do New York, but if this was like a random pay-per-view in the middle of the year, like February or something, then yeah, maybe they think about doing that. But this is International Fight Week. You're gonna have a ton of fighters coming in to do appearances. It's always a big week for the UFC. They're not going to turn this into a fight night card. They're not going to make this free. They're going to stick with what they have, and they're going to put together what they can at the last minute. So very interesting to see how this card ends up shaping up, because at the time I'm recording this, it is June 13th. I'm going to be heading to Vegas in a few weeks to cover this card. I still don't have any idea how this card's going to look. It's going to be very interesting to see what the UFC does. But again, this is the result of doing too many events. You don't have many options because fighters are booked. Like, think about it. I'm not saying they would have done this, but like, what if they hadn't booked Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades? What if they hadn't booked Leon and Bilal for, that card? What if they hadn't booked Sanhagen and Umar for the Middle East? Like, if they had these other options, they could put this on the card if they weren't so hell-bent on having so many events. And like, I understand that really how the UFC does their schedule is they pick the location and then they sort of build the card around that. That's why Chimaev was always going to be on Saudi Arabia. That's why they put Ikram as the replacement, because Ikram's Muslim and they want, obviously a Muslim fighter to headline the card. So in this card, they just need big names, and that's where the UFC's got to think outside the box a little bit. So anyways, main thing about this video is if this fight happens, we're playing the if game here, guys. Who are you picking? Do you think it's going to be Brian Ortega, or do you think it is going to be Diego Lopes? Would love to hear your pick on this fight. And again, once 303 rolls around, I will be doing a full card preview on this. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you like this fight being added? What do you think about all the chaos going on? We'd love to hear from you guys. And what are some other fights they can add? Are they going to add other fights? I think they kind of have to. Like right now, this is not like if Hill and Olberg are out, McGregor Chandler's out, like they have to do something. And I have no idea what they're going to do. And it's not going to be Yuri and Pereira. Like, people thinking it's going to be a title fight, I have a hard time seeing that. Like, why would Pereira take a short notice title fight on short notice against Yuri? If you're Yuri, why do you want to fight so quickly against Pereira when you just lost to him in November? I've heard that rumor. What are some other ones? BMF title. Max just fought, like, gave us a fight of the year. I don't think he's coming back to fight on this card. Like, we'll see. UFC's, done a lot of moves that I've been surprised by, but I really don't know what they're going to do about this card. I'm very interested to see what happens. I think at the end of the day, we're not going to get the card we want, but that's just my pessimism coming in here. Again, let me know in the comments who you think potentially wins this fight, or who do you think wins this fight in this potential matchup was kind of what I'm trying to say. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @LynchOnSports. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.